Cloud never complained about orders. Recently he began to question them more and more. Isla felt even worse when she remembered how she had tried to dissuade that stupid girl from teaching toxicology, telling her that it wasn't too early for her to do it. All right. That was the original goal. Interfere in what your nephew does. Since it wasn't ready yet, he tried to finish it that way. But you must hurry. If we kill him here as an example, those timid elders who are hesitant to join me will have no choice but to trust me and follow me. Cowards who were desperate to preserve their lives. With a disgusted expression, Byron poured the remaining alcohol in his glass into his mouth in one go. Needless to say, he was dissatisfied with the fact that he had to join forces with those people to claim a place that had been his since birth. Is it because of the lady who is calling? Cloud asked cautiously. There could be no other reason for Byron's sudden change of attitude. Byron heard he was clever. He lowered his head slightly and smiled mischievously. As his head was lowered, a shadow was cast over his face, which made him feel much sadder. That's how it is. I thought my Ophelia would wait for me there forever. This time I realized that maybe I couldn't do it. I was anxious. He felt like Ophelia was going to run away forever, out of his reach. He had to take it all back quickly and hug her, otherwise everything would become meaningless. So, let's stop talking nonsense and act quickly, okay? If not now, when can I kill him? I only trust you, Cloud Air. That way his family would not be disgraced. Byron refilled his empty glass with alcohol and gestured with his chin to signal Cloud to leave. Yes, my lord. And Cloud, as always, had no choice but to follow his master's orders. It was the moment she had been waiting for. Isla was lying on the bed and kept watching Laura's movements. Tonight, it was Laura's turn to stay by her side, and Isla put a small amount of sleeping pills in the glass of water to make Laura fall asleep. Because it was especially concentrated, just 1 or 2 drops were enough to put Laura to sleep until the next morning. He had no choice but to continue staring at Laura's notice, as all he had to do now was wait for Laura to take a sip of water. What's wrong, miss? Laura opened her eyes and asked why he was staring at her instead of sleeping. He didn't seem to like the idea of having to watch his enemy's daughter sleep without being able to sleep. No. Arousing more suspicion would have ruined the job, so Isla turned toward the wall to avoid looking at Laura. But his hearing was completely focused on Laura, so as not to miss the sound of the hem of her clothes rustling even when Laura moved a little. And after quite some time had passed, I could hear Laura drinking her water. Enough is enough. The effects of the medicine would soon spread and young Laura would not be able to overcome the wave of sleep and would sleep soundly until the next morning. Isla waited with a beating heart for Laura to fall asleep. I can't do it. Why am I so sleepy? The sound of Laura offering futile resistance to the approaching beast was heard. But soon, even his breathing began to be heard. Laura had finally fallen asleep. Laura? Isla got out of bed, touched and shook Laura. But the effect of the sleeping pill he had prepared was enormous. No matter how hard he tried to wake Laura, she fell into a deep sleep and could not wake up. Walking around in a one-piece white nightgown would draw too much attention, so she wore a black robe hanging on a rack above her clothes. She was completely black, she even wore a hat. Although it was a little bright due to the streetlights her humans had turned on, the darkness of her night was enough to hide her. He opened the window and looked out. At the right moment, he saw the bar door open and someone come out. Cloud? It wasn't easy to recognize him because he was wearing a black hood like hers, but looking at his tall stature and robust physique, it was clearly Cloud. Where are you going? Cloud's main job was to protect Byron in this dangerous city, with people everywhere and at night. The fact that Cloud moved instead of staying next to Byron would have meant that he was very important. I have to chase him. She didn't know exactly what was going on, but if she followed Cloud, she could definitely get some information. He looked out the window at the roof of the building next door. I was trying to gauge the distance to see if I could jump it. It is very possible. It was clear that if he hesitated, he wouldn't catch up to Cloud. He jumped and landed nimbly on the roof. It looked like an agile wildcat. Good. There it is. After seeing Cloud's appearance, he walked across the roof and followed him. From roof to roof. And under another roof. It was a quick but silent movement. There were still quite a few people walking the city streets at night, but no one noticed Ayla's presence. Except for a cat who was sleeping well on the roof, but puffed out his tail in surprise at the sudden appearance of a human. Where did he go? He was jumping on the roof for a while, but stopped and looked around when he couldn't see the Cloud that had been visible a moment ago. She missed him in vain. As he lowered his body and looked around, he found Cloud hiding in the alley in front of his street, killing his presence. Why did you hide suddenly? If you have realized that you are being followed, Ayla swallowed her dry saliva and quietly hid behind the roof. No, that wouldn't be it. There was no way he would have noticed her presence. She was well aware of the difference in skill between Cloud and her. There was no way he could have noticed her presence in that short period of time, even though he hadn't noticed her the entire time. So why? He's hiding in that alley, waiting for something. He decided to climb down from the roof and take a closer look at Cloud. As he looked around to see which way to go, he noticed that the alley behind the building was deserted. It was a narrow space that was embarrassing to even be called an alley. After once again confirming that there was no one in the alley, he quickly jumped down from the roof. He had obviously checked several times before jumping, but the moment he landed softly on the ground, suddenly, a figure jumped out of the darkness. Hey! A young voice that seemed to have gone through a transformation made her gasp in surprise as a person fell in front of her. Ayla was equally surprised. Shit! Where did this guy come from? Seeing that the boy looked like he was about to scream, he quickly covered his mouth. Thanks to his quick movements, the hood was removed, revealing his dazzling silver hair hidden under the robe in the moonlight. The boy, whose mouth was suddenly covered by a girl who was shorter than him, looked at Ayla blankly with a puzzled expression. Shoo! She continued to cover the boy's mouth with her left hand and placed the index finger of her right hand on his lips. The boy, realizing what Ayla was saying, nodded his head with a silly expression. Ayla slowly removed the hand covering the boy's mouth and observed his behavior. He was dressed strangely, with his black robe draped just like hers. The skin that peeked through the tunic seemed soft and elastic. He seemed well nourished, so he looked like a noble child who had been well fed and raised. The golden eyes that shone even in the dark reminded him of Byron's. With his long eyelashes and somewhat handsome face, he seemed to resemble Byron, who had a smooth face like that of a Gissying brother. She didn't know why she looked like Byron, but just remembering it was enough to make Ayla feel bad. What are you doing? She was worried about his sudden appearance without any trace of his presence, so she looked around and vaguely saw a flickering light from the place where the boy had suddenly appeared a moment ago. He quickly disappeared into thin air. It was a trace of magic that he remembered seeing occasionally while living in the Duke's house. It seemed like a magic scroll had been used. Movement magic was high-level magic, so it was quite valuable. He seemed to be from a richer family than he looked. Judging by the luxurious outfit he was wearing under his robe, he was not a suitable person for an alley like this. Only one thing occurred to him: it is clear that the noble master has gone out secretly. Looking at it closely, it seems that they will have problems if he escapes and catches him. Let's pretend we haven't seen each other. Ayla spoke coldly and in the calmest voice possible. I couldn't waste my time in a place like that. It was not possible that the Cloud had disappeared. Isla left the boy behind and walked quickly toward the outside of the alley. Wait a second. However, the boy followed Isla insistently, as if he had something to say to her. The boy had long legs for his young age, but he seemed to have difficulty keeping up with the agile Isla. Isla grimaced in frustration and stopped. The reason was that there was a high chance that Cloud would become aware of his existence if he left the alley with his annoying tail. That? Isla stood with her arms crossed and an angry expression on her face.